President Trump has pardoned Joe Arpaio. The former sheriff of Maricopa County, Arizona, was convicted of criminal contempt for what was described as racial profiling. He received nationwide attention for his crackdown on illegal immigration. The White House released a statement applauding Arpaio's career in the military and law enforcement. It said after more than 50 years of admirable service to our nation, he is a worthy candidate for a presidential pardon. It did not mention Arpaio's charges, did mention his age, 85 years old. CBS News Chief White House Correspondent Major Garrett is on the phone with us. Major, the first thing I thought when I heard this news is I couldn't think of a presidential pardon this controversial at any point of a presidency other than the very last days of it. What was your impression?
Well, it's certainly going to be controversial, and it's going to strike people as premature, not just because Joe Arpaio, the former sheriff of Maricopa County, hasn't even been sentenced yet. That's due in the first week of October. And so the process hasn't even run its course. And this is not a pardon that went through the Justice Department process, because the Justice Department doesn't even do any pardoning processing until someone's actually gone through every step of the process. So this is entirely at the whim of the President of the United States. And when I say whim, I mean that in exactly the terminology that applies, because his legal counsel advised against this, at least for now. The legal advice that the president got from his White House counsel and others in the White House was at least wait until Joe Arpaio is sentenced in early October. He may not be sentenced to any prison time. This may not even be something that rises to the level of requiring or necessitating presidential intervention. At least let the process play out. That's what the president's own lawyers, who he hired to advise him on the law, told him was their advice. He has ignored that advice, granted a pardon before the process has played itself out. And just in context, on this evening, this Friday night, where the nation is justifiably anxious about what Hurricane Harvey will or will not do in Texas and Louisiana, just think about this. The president pardoned Joe Arpaio tonight before he decided whether or not to sign a major disaster declaration for Texas and Louisiana, something that the governor of Texas requested hours ago. And the two Republican senators from Texas, Ted Cruz and John Cornyn, sent a letter to the White House also hours ago urging the president to swiftly approve. Okay? So just put these two things in context. Two states, but one in particular, is in the path of a major hurricane, a huge storm. The governor of Texas asked for a major disaster declaration in order to free up federal funds even before damage occurs, to begin the process of making sure the federal government could do everything to remedy, if possible, whatever damage. That hasn't been signed yet. It may very well be signed tonight. But I just want our viewers to understand the sequencing here. Something that the president's own lawyers told him couldn't wait in the judgment of the president, but something the governor of Texas hours ago urged to be done, it still hasn't been done. So I think those two things are worth putting at least in comparison to one another. There will be lots of people who will debate the propriety of pardoning Joe Arpaio. I'm only focusing right now on the immediate contrast and juxtaposition of one action when there still hasn't been another on a pressing matter of emergency preparedness and preparation for two states in the path of a major storm.
Well, and sure, many people not only see it as a contrast, but as a Hall of Fame entrant in the Friday night news dump pantheon. Explain for a second why Joe Arpaio is both a controversial figure and someone who plays right into this kind of divide between the Trump base, who care so much about immigration, and the broader Republican Party.
All right, so Sheriff Joe's approach to undocumented immigrants in Maricopa County, the largest, the most populated, not the largest by landmass, but the most populous county in the state of Arizona, was to say, we're going to look for your documents all the time. Anytime we run into you or bump into you in any legal context, we're going to check your documents. And if you don't have them, we're going to turn you over to the federal immigration authorities for deportation. And if they're not interested in deporting you, we're going to hold you in various forms of detention. The federal court ruled that there was an aspect of this approach that was racial profiling, that there were traffic stop areas and that there were means by which people were stopped without any other probable cause, the court said, that suggested this was an unconstitutional act of racial profiling. The president's lawyers said that could be overturned, that could be challenged at the Supreme Court because undocumented immigrants don't possess constitutional rights. That's a separate legal matter that could have been adjudicated downstream. Be that as it may, federal court said that Sheriff Joe, while he was still sheriff of Maricopa County, could no longer carry out this policy. That was an order. Sheriff Joe continued to carry it out. That's where the contempt charge comes in. The fact that he kept going with the policy, stated publicly he was going to do the policy, was not going to adhere to the court order, led to a judge saying, you're guilty of criminal contempt or contempt of the court order. That's what this is all about, okay? There's a long legal history on both sides of this. One of the complaints that Sheriff Joe had was this judge that said he was guilty of contempt did so without the benefit of a jury trial. Sheriff Joe thought if I'd had a jury trial, maybe there'd have been a different result. There was one judge in charge. That was one of his legal grievances. All the territory I've just covered, the president's own lawyer said, let that play out. Let that play out. We know you want to pardon him. We know that's your intention. We know that's what you want to do. But for a matter of law and for a matter of presidential propriety, don't get involved prematurely. Wait for this process to at least play out a little bit longer. President quite clearly, and as I said, whimsically decided tonight to do it under these circumstances, which even his own lawyers don't deny he has the power. The president has the power. No question about that. But their legal advice was to wait, and he did not heed that in any stretch of the imagination.
Okay, Major Garrett joining us. Thanks so much, Major.
Sure.